Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So today we're making luggage that's covered with fabric, plaid fabric. Now we've made quite a few different types of luggage and suitcases in this series, but I've got to show you this one. Now this is made exactly like my wooden suitcases, except instead of using basswood, I use the jumbo craft sticks and popsicle sticks. Both halves are the same size and the same depth. And for variation, I'm using two different types of plaid fabric. So you will see two different types of plaid in the course of this video. Now, after I made my boxes, I definitely had to sand them off. You don't have to do a lot of sanding because it's going to be covered with the fabric, but you definitely want to smooth it out enough that the dolls don't get splinters in their tiny fingers. And I did use my Beacon's glue. And I applied a generous coat on the one half of the back of the suitcase. And I did take a moment to thin it out to make it as thin as possible because I don't want it seeping through my fabric. Now this fabric is pretty hardy and ample, so I don't expect to have that. But you want to do that just in case you're using a thinner, lighter weight fabric. And when you get to the sides, I normally like to glue my sides up and pinch the corners. And I'm going to kind of show you here what I mean, how it's kind of folded up and all the sides are touching, but we're going to pinch those corners in and trim them off nice and neat. Now, as you're working with this, there may be times where you need to add a little additional glue to make sure that all your corners and sides are glued up tight. And those corners need to touch each other. Almost the glue needs to be packed into those corners because you almost want the corners to get hard and solid by the glue. And once you're confident that the glue is dry and solid, now it's time to trim off those corners and fold the other fabric down into the inside of your suitcase. Now you want to make sure again that those corners are solid. They should feel firm as though the glue has saturated them and hardened. And then when you trim it off with your scissors, it'll be nice and solid. It won't be any fraying and it won't peel back off of your wood. Now your corner should look nice and neat like that, really clean. And I'm going to show you again. Here's one of the corners. It's hardened by the glue and I'm trimming it right along that plaid line. And see how clean and neat that is? The fabric corners should almost look like miter cuts. Now I'm trying to get in here close because I want you to see me cut these other corners off. When you get done with this portion, there should be a lot of triangles laying on your desk. Now I'm trimming here on each corner, sort of mitering it in, so when you fold the fabric in, there won't be any bunching up on the inside of your suitcase. Now here I am again, cutting it at an angle, snipping off just a little triangle. Be careful with your hands, dolls. Now, if your flap of fabric that you're trying to fold in on the inside is too long, trim it off. Now, don't trim it off so short that it won't cover all of the wood. Just snip it so it'll be nice and even, because you don't want excess fabric bunching up when you begin to line the inside of your suitcase. Now, dolls, I spread glue on the whole inside of my suitcase, but if you need to do one section at a time, do that and then gently pinch down or tuck in those sides. Now, if you need to clamp it down, that's fine, but if the glue gets a little bit tacky, sometimes it's easy to just press it in with your fingers. But again, don't allow that fabric to be too long. No, I should have been using my stick, but I was using my scissors. Don't do that, dolls, because you'll actually get glue on your blades, which will be an absolute disaster. But be very careful and deliberate as you press down the insides. Again, do not use your scissors. Now, dolls, after you've allowed your two halves to dry, now we're getting to what I call the fun part. Now, this is what I call stage one of detailing. I'm going to create an effect that makes it almost look like coated canvas. I guess it will be coated, but I'm going to give it a thin coat of the matte Mod Podge to seal in and protect the fabric. Now, I will distress some of my luggage in a later video, but I do want to lock down this color and this look. The Mod Podge will seal and protect the fabric, and again, it'll make it look like it's coated canvas. This definitely qualifies as a pre-K moment in the process, but we can't turn back, dolls. We're too far gone. Now here I am, dolls, using the wooden strap method, adding wooden straps to this navy blue plaid suitcase. Now I'm using some of the lines in the stripes as my guide as to where I place my wood strips. Now dolls, you definitely can be a little bit more precise and measure and line your lines up really neatly so that they'll be equal. But dolls, you know I didn't. I just eyeballed it and put my glue down. But in the end, it worked out nice and I'm really pleased with my end result. Now, I will leave a link in the description to the video when I made the wooden suitcases where I added these wood straps so you can see a full tutorial on how I did this. Now, dolls, definitely take your time with this process. If you're adding the wood strips along the bottom, it is a little bit more tedious than if you were adding the leather or the suede. So be patient with yourself. And keep in mind, this is edited video. It took me a lot longer than the length of this video to put this together. But I just want you dolls to realize there's so many different ways to use one or two techniques to get a variety of different looks. There is no wrong way. So use your imagination and just make sure that in the end, you're happy with your end result and that you had fun doing it. And here I'm just giving you that glance at my brass hinges. At this point, I'm really getting excited thinking about all the different scenes I'm going to create with this luggage, but let me focus myself. Now, when you get to the ends or the corners, if you have any gaps, definitely take the time and use a little bit of wood putty and to fill in those gaps to make sure you have full closure because you want these wood strips to actually look like leather. So you want it to be a continuous piece. You don't want it to look broken. Make it look seamless. Some may ask, why would I use sticks and putty and sanding to make my straps when I could just use the leather or suede? I want you dolls to be clear that there's more than one way to create a look with different materials, but you'll get the same effect. Now that the bag is all done and got the straps on and everything set, it's time to line it. And I use that same wallpaper that looks like cotton ticking. And I did cut the pieces a little bit bigger than the actual inside of my luggage and just trimmed it off with my craft blade after the paper was dry. Take your time, dolls, and trim it very, very slowly so you don't cut your fabric. Now, dolls, if you need to, add a little additional glue to those corners to make sure they're locked down. Now, dolls, I know I showed this in the video where I made the wooden luggage, but I felt it was worth repeating. Here I'm adding the brass hinges and I'm using my Loctite super glue. Now, Gorilla super glue gel works well for this as well. I just like the Loctite nozzle. And you just gently place your hinges right on top of that gel glue. And the gel glue is really great because it stays in place and it gives you an opportunity to manipulate things and get them in order before it sets up. Now always be very careful not to get your super glue into your actual hinge where the hinge moves and opens and closes. And while it's still wet, go ahead and put your brass studs that you use for nail art into those holes to give the impression that they're fastened on with some screws or rivets. Now, dolls, I know these details are tedious, but they really, really lend a lot of realism to your overall piece. So for this piece of luggage, I'm using the tan leather straps and then I'm painting the closures black. So I'm just kind of mixing it up, dolls. I didn't paint that one, so I'm just using a detail brush to touch it up. And I'm using it as my fastener in the front. So don't be afraid to use different combinations and different patterns. So dolls, you can mix up and use these techniques in any combination you wish. Go ahead, use your imagination and come up with something unique and amazing. Now dolls, at this point you have a fully assembled suitcase. You can do any number of straps in whatever directions and any colors. Now you know I added quite a bit of my brass studs because I really do like that nail art on these bags. But I did end up using a little additional cording around the opening of my suitcase. It seemed like I saw a little gap. So this is one of those moment styles you have to come up with different ways to problem solve. That's another big thing with miniatures. Sometimes you'll run into little glitches and problems and you have to figure out how to solve it. When you're making things from scratch and you're creating your own original designs, you'll have to learn problem resolution. Don't get discouraged, don't get frustrated, just keep moving. If you have to do it more than once, that's fine. If you have to do it 10 times before you get it right, go ahead and keep doing it. Even if you're gifted, you have to practice. Work through your mistakes. If you have to, write down what you did well or what worked, but you'll never forget what didn't work. I guess I want you dolls to just stay encouraged in the process of learning. No one ever looks at a baby when they fall and say they'll never walk. A baby will fall 100 times before they're able to truly stroll across the floor without falling. Although I know you dolls are not babies, just give yourself the same grace while you're learning. And here's the blue one. I've completed it with the wood straps. Just want to give you kind of close-up look at it and see the inside. Now we do have a few more things to go over and cover before this series is up. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for part 8 of bags, boxes, and luggage. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.